New Mexico Crime Files, a deep dive into the archives, shocking and notorious cases, the arrests and what led to them, and what happened to the subject. Here are your hosts, Dean Staley and Jessica Garate.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of New Mexico Crime Files. I'm Jessica Garate, KRQE's evening anchor, along with my co-anchor, Dean Staley. And also, we have a very special guest joining us today, our investigative reporter, Gabrielle Burkhart. Thank you for joining us.
One of the best investigative reporters I have ever worked with in my more than 30 years, and a great person and a great reporter. And this story you brought us this time was pretty shocking, Gabby.
Yeah. Well, you're too kind, Dean.
We are kind, Gabby. We are. No, there's a lot of kindness here.
This story is not kind, though. It is
No.
very shocking.
Yeah. Tell us about it.
Okay, so the nuts and bolts of this story are we have an officer, a law enforcement officer, responds to a crash, and things just go sideways from there. She is a DWI suspect at the time. He takes her to a remote location. The accusation is that he raped her in a remote location and lied about it in the report. She comes forward. Ultimately, he gets convicted of this.
Yeah, this is insane. And as veteran reporters, all of us, we deal with these stories really year-round all the time. Police essentially breaking trust. I mean, these are people, you have the gun and the badge, and you have a responsibility to the public. And these are those moments where, in various ways, we have the cop that gets arrested for drunk driving, right? You have the cop who is involved in a domestic sometimes, which always shocked me. I thought, wow, how could you be a cop and deal with domestic violence and not see it in your own life? Those are always shocking to me, but there are plenty of others.
Yeah, and I think we also had a case more recently where a man was faking being a deputy and trying, like, on all these apps to try to get dates by using that. And it was someone that finally, like, kind of looked through and was like, hey, this guy is not a deputy. Even was invited to a school to come and speak on campus about, because he had graduated from that high school, and was like, oh, now he's a deputy, come talk about law enforcement, and he was not law enforcement.
Right.
Yeah.
And so a caveat, that is not the majority of police officers.
Right.
The vast majority of them do a really tough job, and they do a good job, and they're honest, and they uphold this idea of what we all want them to be. But this was just a horrific case of breaking that trust.
I like watching it. It's just creepy and scary to me.
Yeah, I think it's a good example of, like what you said, Dean, is we trust that law enforcement will have all of our best intentions because they are to serve and protect us at the public. And that's the oath that they take in this position. But when you have somebody who's breaking that trust, I think it's really like highlights the importance of journalism and what we do to hold the powerful accountable, because this young woman, I mean, this was an older case that I covered, but I will never forget one of the things that she said in her interview that is recorded, and we'll get to that later. But she said, they teach you fight or flight. But in that moment, she didn't know what the right move was because she was alone and she knows this guy has a gun.
Yeah. And she says in the piece, because you're dealing with a police officer, if you fight, you're in trouble. If you flee, that's
You're in
also a
trouble.
crime, fleeing from a police officer. So you're stuck there. I mean, a horrific situation.
Yeah, terrifying. I can't imagine what was going through her mind. And it's just like, I remember getting really emotional just listening to her jail phone call, which we'll get to. The first person she called, when you're a young woman needing help, she called her dad.
Yeah. And that was heartbreaking to listen to.
It is.
Yeah.
It's really chilling and just absolutely heartbreaking. Let's go ahead and look at this story. This is one of your investigations from 2021.
You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in court of law.
From cop to accused criminal. Former Isleta Police Officer Leon Martin is also facing a federal lawsuit, all stemming from what he's accused of doing with a DWI suspect he'd met on a prior call and friended on Facebook.
An inmate at the Valencia County Detention Center, New Mexico.
In a November 2021 phone call to her father from jail,
Can you hear me? Yeah, hi, Dad. Hi.
a 21-year-old woman who'd just been in a car crash and booked for DWI reveals what she says just happened to her at the hands of her arresting officer, then Isleta Police Officer Leon Martin.
You know the cop who arrested me? He was the one that hit me up on Facebook, Dad. And he told me not to say anything, that I hadn't showered. And whenever I get out tomorrow, I want to go straight to the hospital.
So he took you somewhere and
and did stuff with you.
This phone call is the first record of her sharing her story. She says Martin drove her to a remote area in Albuquerque, pulled over, and asked her to go to the driver's side, where she says she was raped.
Because they teach you fight or flight, but if it's an officer, you get charged if you fight and you get charged if you run. He even said that he could change the time on the paperwork.
She reported the rape, and state police officers arrested Martin.
Where am I going to be going?
MDC.
Martin was booked into the Metropolitan Detention Center in November of 2021, charged with 2 counts of rape, false imprisonment, demanding or receiving a bribe, and violation of ethical principles of public service, all felonies.
To be honest, I do regret it. It did escalate, I'm not going to lie. I could have prevented it. I should have prevented it, but it escalated too far than what I wanted it to.
With his criminal case still pending, the woman is now suing Martin and the state of New Mexico for negligence, arguing the state, which trains officers for local departments and certifies them, negligently failed to properly train and supervise Martin. The lawsuit has reached federal court.
You could see at Loveless when I left. There's an hour and a half of time missing before I got back to the jail, Dad.
At the heart of her case is evidence that Martin drove her to a secluded road near MDC instead of straight to booking in Valencia County. The lawsuit against him states Martin turned off his radio and location data so that his whereabouts were undetected. In a recorded interview with state police investigators, Martin tried telling them he'd just gotten turned around.
I mean, you're going west when you should be going south.
Right.
That's a huge difference. Is that what happened? You just took her up there because you knew it was a secluded spot?
No. Yeah, but no.
You obviously were wanting to have sex with her. If you didn't want to have sex with her, you wouldn't have had sex with her, right?
Yeah, she said that she did want to talk, and that's when it did escalate.
In that phone call from jail, the woman's father encouraged her to speak up right there and then.
I do not trust that in any shape, way, or form. In any way do I trust the police. I do not trust them.
Since his arrest, a judge agreed to keep Martin in jail pending trial, when a jury will decide his fate for the next 24 years. Gabrielle Burkhart, KRQE Investigates.
Yeah, I just want to say, everyone in this room is a parent, but something absolutely, as a father, heartbreaking, hearing this father talking to his daughter who's in jail, who's in custody, who doesn't have really control of her own situation, right? Whatever the guards, you really don't have a way to protect your daughter in that moment. And to hear that she was in this vulnerable position before they took her to the jail and had this happen, absolutely heartbreaking.
Yeah. I cannot imagine what he was thinking, what was going through his mind. And just to hear her say, like, she's in jail. She could tell someone, and she didn't want to. She's like, I don't trust anyone here.
Yeah, must be terrifying. You think, well, are they going to let me out of here? Am I going to be found dead in my cell? Right? Who knows?
Yeah.
And it's so hard to speak up in those situations. And so what a brave young woman, I think, when I'm listening to that, to at least like call her dad, make them aware, no telling how many times this may have happened before, and they're so scared, and she's young and not willing to speak up. So for women to be able to do that, it takes a lot. And I'm glad that she did.
And she's so smart in that moment, too, saying, hey, I haven't showered. I want to, I haven't showered. She knows there might be evidence that can be collected. And then to hear the dad say, you mean he did stuff to you? He doesn't want to say the word. He doesn't want to say sex assault, rape. But he's communicating to her like, oh, did something really bad happen? And you just heartbreaking.
It's heartbreaking.
Yeah. So we're going to take a break now. But when we come back, we will talk about the case that gets made about this officer and how police really narrowed it down in terms of charging him and holding him accountable.
And welcome back to New Mexico Crime Files. Today, we are going through an investigation done by Gabrielle Burkhart back in 2021, and it involves a police officer who goes and arrests a young woman, 21 years old, after she had crashed into a guardrail, drunk driving, allegedly, and then he arrests her, takes her out to the middle of nowhere, and rapes her. And it's just a very chilling case. Gabby, when you got this story, how did you come across this story in the beginning?
Well, actually, it was a source with state police who tipped me off to this and said, hey, we have this case. Obviously, there was recorded interviews with this officer. And at the time, watching that recorded interview with Leon Martin, he basically admits to having sex with this young woman, but he kind of tries to make it sound like, well, it was consensual. She just wanted to talk. We were talking. But the state police investigators knew, no, he knew what he was doing. There was time missing in the report. He was driving all in the wrong direction. He went to an area near MDC, which is pretty far out there if you've ever driven to the Metropolitan Detention Center. She was supposed to be going to the hospital in a whole other direction. So I think the state police investigators were really concerned about this case and hearing his story and really suspecting, like, oh, has this guy, like, done this before? We don't really know, but they were able to put a pretty solid case together in this instance.
I think if you're a cop, too, it is incredibly suspicious to hear another cop say, I was lost. Like, you're in the metro, right? You have Albuquerque, you have Los Lunas, you have, Bosque Farms, Los Lunas, you have Berlin. I mean, this metro area is easy to navigate, right? Mm-hmm. And cops depend on their sense of where they are in their navigation for their very lives, because you have to be able to say in an emergency, I'm being attacked, I'm on the west side of the Rio Grande, just south of Alameda or wherever. I mean, I think cops have this built-in sense of where they are at all times, because that may save their life at some point. So to hear a cop say, oh, I got turned around and I was driving and I ended up out here, I think the cops had to in that moment just think, oh, man, that's just BS. That's just not true.
And the young woman said in her interview, she was smart enough to know, he allegedly told her, I can change the times in the reports, disable his location data, that kind of stuff. So she said in her interview, look for that. There's an hour missing. She knew what to look for and where to point investigators.
And the other thing, too, that just really stood out to me was that, he felt like he was preying on her before. I mean, he'd reached out to her on Facebook. He had been a part of an arrest.
Yeah, a previous issue that she was involved in. That's how he first got acquainted to her, according to the police reporting. And he apparently found her on Facebook, messaged her. She described it as trying to hit on her via Facebook Messenger. And even listening to that quick phone call with her dad, she says, you remember that cop who messaged me on Facebook? Like, it was as if, she recognized him too.
Yeah.
Then he ends up at the scene, when she crashes, and like it just seemed all of it.
None of it felt right.
Incredibly predatory. And as reporters, we all know this. When you're interviewing somebody and cops do the same thing that rings true, you know that when they give you a detail that they could not have made up or would not have made up, you think, oh, this person is telling the truth. There's no question about that. And when she says, he said I could change the times, that's not something someone in the back of a police car would make up that was expressed to them by a cop, right? Well, I'm sure when state police investigators heard that, they were like, oh, this guy said that. There's no doubt in their minds that he said that to her. Like, I can adjust the times. I can fake this. Yeah.
And those are easily verifiable by just driving those routes, seeing where she crashed. He was supposed to take her to the hospital because, again, she had crashed and had, potential injuries. You can check when somebody's logged into the hospital. That's an easy thing to check. So my impression was he just didn't think he was going to get caught.
Yeah. Another thing that strikes me about this story is I'm old enough to remember, I think there was a time, I don't know how far back you have to go, maybe the 40s, the 30s, maybe the 50s, where there was this idea where a cop might be able to say, oh, well, it was consensual. Oh, she was coming on to me. Oh, and I think absolutely, I don't know when that shift happened in absolute terms. And even a teacher might say that, a teacher who has sex with a student says, well, it was her. I think we absolutely are living in a period now where there's no question. This person is in your custody, right? If she tries to have sex with you and you have sex with her, you're the one this is rape, right?
Right.
There's this real clear delay. So I was shocked that this cop thought he could sort of say it escalated and sort of soft sell that, like, it's just kind of escalated. It was both of us really, attracted to each other or something insane to say. That just seems insane that someone in this day and age would make that case.
There's an outright power dynamic.
Yeah.
He is her arresting officer. He's got cuffs, a gun. She's in the back seat.
Yeah.
There's no world in which this is okay.
Yeah. And schools are the same way, and age is the same way. If you're 30 and she's 15, I'm sorry, that's just rape. Like, what are we talking about, right? So that was really strange to hear that from that cop.
And listening to him. Great job, getting these interviews, Gabby, and showing. And I think it just says a lot, like when he's trying to tiptoe and he's like, well, yes, no. And like the way and you could just tell the state police officer who's interviewing him is really like just not believing him and really getting to the bottom of it and seeing that. I think it just makes a difference being able to see those interviews.
Yeah, and the cop says, I love it too, and that you could tell it's an experienced investigator and it's experienced interviewer says, come on, you wouldn't have had sex with her, or you wouldn't have done that if you weren't trying to have sex. He was just sort of saying, come on, it's you and me. The truth is here in the room with us. Are you really going to deny it? I mean, and to get him to come that last step to say, well, yeah, that's what happened.
Yeah.
You know?
Again, it's like looking at a map is what this investigator had to do and be like, this isn't tracking.
Yeah. Yeah. And then hold his feet to the fire during the interview. Yeah.
So we were all curious, what happened to this guy? You know, when you take an officer to trial, you have people who really see officers as like not being able to do something wrong. Gabby followed this case through trial. We're going to hear his punishment when we come back.
All right, so welcome back to this episode of New Mexico Crime Files. We're talking about a police officer who arrested a DWI suspect after a crash, took her to a remote place, and sexually assaulted her, eventually taken to trial. And the charges, I just want to point out, now that we've talked about how this happened, 2 counts of rape, all right? So he had sex with her. False imprisonment, right? Which is sort of like kidnapping. This is like she doesn't have a choice to go anywhere. You're the cop. You have the gun, the badge, the handcuff, right? So she's a prisoner. And then demanding a bribe, which I think was because there was some implication on his part like, oh, well, maybe we can make this go away. I can, there was this sort of offering that we can do this and then things will get better for you. So those are some interesting charges, I thought.
Yeah, he was even offering to the woman, according to her, that he could, speak to the judge or maybe get her a break on this DWI charge that he's arresting her for.
Yeah, absolutely. So it was sort of like trying to take advantage of her and trying to sell her like, this is the bribe that you have to pay me. Really ugly stuff.
Awful,
ugly stuff.
Dirty. What happened to him?
So this crime happened in 2021. He was found guilty of 2 counts of criminal sexual penetration, which is the court way of saying rape. And he was sentenced to 4 years in prison. So that was in June of 2023 when he had that conviction. So we are in February of 26. He's still serving that 4-year term.
Yeah, assuming there wasn't good time or he didn't get out early.
Yes.
Right.
I'm going to say something that may not be very popular, but I find it, so he's 22 years old when this happened. There's a part of me that just thinks 22 is too young to be a cop. I don't know if that, I'm sure there are some really good cops that are only 22 or 21 or, some young cops, but this guy just seemed like a child. The way he thought he could talk his way out of it, it just seemed like there was not a developed sort of sense of like, this is an important job. This is a responsibility. You think you're going to pretend that this was just something that happened? I just was sort of astounded by that. And it's not that older cops aren't capable of something like this either, but I thought that was really strange to have a 22-year-old. He felt like a 22-year-old to me in some ways.
Yes, when he was speaking and just his mannerisms and how he came across, definitely much younger.
There was a
not very
level
mature.
of immaturity.
Yeah.
But also, she was very young. She was 21. And, maybe he thought like this is a peer or I don't know what he was thinking. None of it was good. But also he was alone in that arrest. So, different departments might have different policies in how they operate, how they respond to crashes or scenes. I'm not really sure what Isleta PD's SOP was at the time for how to respond to calls like that. But yeah, he operated solo in this whole arrest.
Yeah.
Which is really interesting because usually when you do see DWI arrests, you get like your sergeants involved or you get others involved there. And this is just
there's more
one
on
of
the
those
scene.
things.
Yeah.
And in those small departments, you just don't have the capacity of the workers. So
Yeah, Albuquerque Police would bring a specialist, sometimes DWI
Yes.
unit or tester, right? Someone who's that's all they do. And also, it would be really strange if you're Albuquerque Police to have some random cop from Albuquerque Police show up and say, like, oh, I'll handle this one. Like, that just would not happen in a larger department.
Right.
Yeah, that's a good point, too.
Yeah.
These are a lot smaller departments, smaller agencies, and just fewer resources overall.
Yeah. I want to point out again, this is one of those cases where police absolutely break the public's trust. And I know it's not bad. It's bad for the cops. It's bad for the public. But, there are a lot of really good cops when
Yes.
this happens. They just shake their heads and say, why? Why did someone like, who was part of my tribe, my team, act like this? And they're absolutely disgusted and they feel like, wow, now we've got to, and we've heard the sheriff say it before when deputies have been in trouble, like now we've got to go back and earn that trust again. So really ugly. But also, I like to celebrate the fact that in this country, people get held to account. I've lived in different parts of the world where this wouldn't happen. If a cop took advantage of somebody, they would never be held to account. I mean, there's some developing countries where that's just normal. So I celebrate the fact that the state police stepped in, a light was shined on this case, and ultimately there was justice for the victim.
To your point, Dean, again, a reminder, and we don't always get to share this in our stories, but it was another officer who tipped me off to this story. So they're just as upset when things like this happen and feel like, these people need to be held accountable because they don't deserve to wear a badge.
Yeah, they're not one of us.
And I'd love to celebrate the victim that she actually stepped forward. This could have she could have been scared. She could have not said a word about it. And that she was able, and this officer could have kept doing this stuff and getting away with it, and that she put a stop to it.
Yeah, I'd like to think her dad supported her in that too. That was
Absolutely.
great that he was, she had someone to reach out to say, hey, well, we're not going to let this go.
Yeah, I can't imagine how this impacted her long term either. I did reach out. I tried to speak to her when this story aired just to give them a heads up also, but I never heard back. So I hope she's doing well.
Yeah. Gabby, great reporting. And these are the stories that make our job sort of worthwhile in terms of feel like, the absolute payoff of a good journalist that's shining a light on something that everyone gets to see, and there's a sort of a broader good that comes out of that. Yeah.
I hope so.
Yeah.
This is wonderful.
Thanks,
Thank you for
guys.
joining us and sharing the story with us and sharing it with the public and exposing this kind of stories.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And this happens to be the last episode of this season of New Mexico Crime Files over there.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
we've enjoyed
this is
having all of our
second-
viewers. Yeah.
This is our second season. I'm looking forward to the third.
Yeah.
You guys are killing it.
Yeah, it's been great. And we'll keep you up to date on the next one.